communities in the Beaufort Delta move towards renewable energies. So take it away, Mitch. You got a microphone that works?
Forever, basically, producing electricity, putting off zero emissions, zero gases, requires no maintenance whatsoever, and doesn't make a sound. It just sits there and does its thing for a long, long time. Super, super. I just want to apologize in advance here. I was intending to be here all day today to listen to what was going on. It was my intention to do so. I got called out on a service call this morning, emergency service call, had to go. I walked in 20 minutes ago, drove into town an hour ago. So if I duplicate anything that's been talked about, I apologize in advance. So for the history of solar, it's been around for at least 30 years, longer. We've been involved with systems in this area that are out there 20 plus years old, still ticking away like the same as they were the day they were installed. Awesome to see. Throughout the world, solar has gone crazy. With the inception of a lot of government-funded programs throughout Europe, solar is through the roof. Here in Canada in 2009, with the inception or introduction of a feed-in tariff program in Ontario, there too, solar has gone through the roof. Every field you drive through or drive by has solar. Every barn, there's rooftops. The solar industry is increased demand so drastically that cost of installing these systems has been inversely proportional, and the cost has dropped considerably. With that, we're able to achieve grid parity. In Ontario, for example, one of the systems, or one of the solar farms I'm thinking of is Serena. That's an installed 97 megawatt system. And if you can kind of imagine the size of a solar panel, it's about my size, I guess. It's roughly the size of a sheet of plywood. This field of solar panels is 380,000-ish solar panels. It's huge. That's projected to produce like 120,000 megawatts of electricity per year. That covers us like 1,100 acres or something like that. It's fairly substantial. And I pulled a little bit of information off a report that was put out by the government in 2013 for some data in 2010, and that one field basically produces 1/3 of Northwest Territories' energy in a year, which is a lot. Our generator production in a year, or generator electricity being produced in a year, is 77,000 megawatts according to that report. So just that one field in Ontario alleviates or eliminates any generator being used in the Northwest Territories, if that was even possible. So with the cost being brought down so low, grid parity is here. It's been here for a few years now. Basically, the definition of grid parity is the cost of a renewable system of any kind, basically. If the cost of putting that system in is equal to or less than the cost of purchasing that service or electricity, in our case, from the utility, you've achieved grid parity. So we've long surpassed that. A lot of the systems that we put in as NWDT Solar typically pay themselves off in 12 to 15 years in energy cost savings. So if you calculate a solar system, which minimum lifespan is 25 years plus, I mean, like Dennis said earlier, we don't know how long they're going to last. They haven't been here that long. But simple math just there, you're paying half for your energy. So that money can obviously be used for other things. Unfortunately, in the last couple of years, we did suffer a couple setbacks on pricing, or not the last couple of years, but this year specifically. So we've seen, I don't know if you'll agree, we've seen about a 20% increase in solar costs this year. But overall, we're still doing fine. Things are great. We've, as NWT Solar, we met our goals last year as a startup company, and this year, if things keep going the way they have been, we'll definitely surpass it by a lot. There's already quite a few solar projects in the Northwest Territories, biggest ones being Fort Simpson, Global Lake. I believe they're owned by Power Corp. But just so everybody has a clear picture of where we're at and how small we are in the solar industry, or the potential there is to grow. For 2014, total solar production for the world now is just under 42,000 megawatts. 400 megawatts of which is being produced in Canada, all of Canada. Never mind just the Northwest Territories, we'd just be a dot on the dot. I think I'm going to wrap it up there, guys. We'll leave some time for the other members to make their little presentations. If there's any questions, I'd be glad to answer them now. As long as I have some time there, I know 15 minutes goes by quick. We're good?
Good, thanks, Mitch. So maybe we'll have a quick question while we're, Jonathan.
Yeah. How easy is it for the average homeowner to start installing a solar panel in their house?
The installation of the solar systems is not that complicated. The problem being is you need to install this according to code. So it needs to be installed by a certified electrical technician with a permit, inspected. So that's where it becomes a little bit more complicated. To date, they will not, or the chief inspector will not issue homeowner permits for solar systems. Once they get a little bit more familiar with solar and what it all takes to get these to be code compliant, especially 2015 code compliant. That may change over time, hopefully.
So in other words, we kind of have to put pressure on City Hall to kind of get their policies together?
No, it's not City Hall, this is GNWT.
Oh.
The inspection department is GNWT. And putting pressure on them, I don't know would help much. Maybe to put pressure so that they learn and are more comfortable inspecting those systems quicker, for sure. You can't change the Canadian electrical code. So that's something that needs to be bound by and adhered to regardless.
At this time, I think they allow a homeowner to do his own wiring as long as he can pass a little test, and they'll give you a
Absolutely.
electrical installation. So they don't have to modify that and have you pass the test on solar installation.
Well, it's not a modification that's required. I mean, that clause is in the legislation or in the guidelines that you can't have a homeowner's permit to do electrical work. It doesn't in any way disclude solar work. Just at this point in time, the chief inspector has decided that they won't issue homeowners permits on solar work. On top of that, he's also requested that all solar installations are 100% engineered and stamped by an NWT registered engineer, which is not required for a lot of home wiring.
Okay, thank you. And we'll get back to the other questions after, but after we hear from Jack and Lena. Go ahead, Jack.
Okay, I hope that I'm able to present a message that's uplifting and optimistic. I mean, we hear all of these gloom and doom prophecies every few days or every few hours or every day. But I've been looking at this business of renewable energy for quite a long time, and just recently have had an opportunity to be at a meeting in New York City of people who were talking about hybrid energy systems. And I've been thinking about the trends that we've been observing and are continuing. I just read a book that helped me put this in words called Abundance. It's by a couple of guys that are sort of Silicon Valley type venture capitalists, venture guys that go out looking for startups, that kind of startup venture businesses. Anyway, my conclusion is that we're really sitting here on the cusp of a very interesting time. We've come through the sort of infancy of a lot of these technologies, and we're now at the point where they're really ready to take off and become dominant forces in our civilization. And there we go. Just it's good to look at our situation from the perspective of off the planet and an intelligent being in the universe, looking at the Earth would think, my, you people are blessed with abundance of energy. You're in the blast of this massive nuclear furnace that's showering you with energy, way more than what you can possibly use. And in fact, some Germans did a little calculation and came up with this figure that shows how much of the Sahara Desert we need in order to collect enough solar energy to run. D is that's Germany, the little one. The middle one is the EU, so 25 countries in the European Union, and the big one is the world. So in 1 hour, the Earth is showered with enough energy to run everything on Earth for a whole year. So in 1 year, we use 1/10,000th of what is available. So it's an energy resource that's, for all intents and purposes, unlimited for our species, our time. And I know a couple of years ago we had a greenhouse gas meeting or something like that, and there was predictions being made then that by 2015, if trends continued, that we would be reaching this point that was mentioned about grid parity. And at that time, it was seen as, oh, yeah, that's a pie in the sky prediction. But lo and behold, here we are 3-4 years later, and those predictions are coming true. But we also have to keep in mind that predictions are difficult things. And Casey Stengel would tell us that we should never make predictions, especially about the future. Certainly there's lots of uncertainty, and there's all kinds of other things that could happen. But at the same time, we do make predictions, and we do make decisions all the time that are based on our predictions of what we think is going to happen. How we think, anytime we make a decision on how much money we're going to invest in a capital project, we have to make predictions about what the performance of that project is going to be and how long it's going to last, and what the conditions are going to be like during the lifetime of that technology or that capital project. So we do it all the time, and there's really no escaping it. We have to be making predictions. If we didn't have to make predictions, I think we should take the advice of Wayne Gretzky in that, and I think we should skate to where the puck's going to be, not where it's been. If we look at where it's been, it's pretty. It's a pretty simple and pretty straightforward. The price of fossil fuel has fluctuated up and down a little bit for the last 60 years, 60, 70 years, but it's been within a relatively confined range, and it's gradually increased. But there's been some other players. There's little, LNGs now in the picture. And the Henry Hub, that's natural gas. Brent is North Sea. They're all in a pretty predictable groove. It's pretty easy to predict what fossil fuel is going to do. But when we add solar to this picture, we can see that this is what we call a disruptive technology. It's coming in like a lightning bolt. In the last 10 or 15 years, the cost of fossil energy has pretty much stayed the same. The cost of solar is dropping like a rock. And in the last 2 or 3 years, certainly by this summer, by next year, solar will be at grid parity in a lot of parts. It's already at grid parity in a lot of markets. It'll be at grid parity in a lot more markets as time progresses. This is just a graphic that shows the growth in solar capacity globalized, and it shows that it's growing like Topsy, and it also shows that it's not about to stop. Solar is on its way, and it's growing like Topsy. It's on what we would call an exponential growth rate, and some interesting conclusions just recently. There was an interesting study from MIT that said we have the technology already in today's market, in today's knowledge base. We have the technologies that we need to take the world to 100% renewable energy, and we can do it by 2050. So it's technically possible. All we have to do is maintain the momentum that's already in the system. And the two main technologies that we have that are good enough to get us to 100% renewable are relatively conventional technologies that are growing and are costed basically on the basis of scale. So the bigger they get, the cheaper they get. The more capacity we add, the cheaper it gets. And this is sort of a geometric exponential growth rate that's happening in both of these technologies. One is crystalline silicon photovoltaics, that's your solar panels, and the other is the lithium-ion battery pack. Both of them are growing at exponential rates, and both of them are getting cheaper the more of them we build. Another thing to keep in mind is that electric vehicles seem to be taking this same growth pattern. They're also starting to grow at exponential rate. And the thing about exponential rates is they start out relatively small in the early years, and they can be relatively innocuous and almost invisible, but once they get some momentum and start doubling in short time frames, they can lead to very spectacular and dramatic growth. I read somewhere the other day that it only took 13 years for the automobile to replace the horse and buggy. That's how these disruptive technologies, how quickly they can take over and become dominant. So this is just some quotes from this book on abundance here from Diomedes and Kotler. Solar prices are falling 5 to 6% annually, and the capacity is growing at the rate of 30% a year. So we're adding 30% to the total of installed solar capacity every year. Expanding from today's 1% penetration, so 1% of the world's energy is currently coming from solar, but if you expand it at the rate of 30%, that's a doubling of about every 2.5 years, 2 to 2.5 years. It only takes 18 years doubling at that rate in order to meet 100% of the energy needs with solar. So 100% of the world's energy needs could be being met with solar in as few as within a generation, surely. And the growth doesn't end there. They say that in 10 years later, so 20 years from now or 30 years from now, at this rate we could producing 1,550% so 1,000 times, 1,500 times what we need. We could be getting it with solar, and solar would be very cheap. It would be these panels that cost $300 today. It would cost $1,000 not that long ago. They'll be like $30. So the cost of solar is coming down that quick, and if we maintain the current rates of the current kind of momentum in the growth of this industry, that's where we could be. We could easily be, and we could get there relatively quickly. So with efficiency lowering our usage and innovation increasing our supply, the combination really could produce a squanderable abundance of energy. We could be back in a phase of civilization where energy is no longer limiting, where it's not really an issue, where everybody on Earth will have as much electricity as they can use for a very small part of their cost of living. It's within reach. And that's why solar is so exciting and so important to keep an eye on in our times. We're just now at the cusp. We've just reached grid parity, and according to Michael Liebrecht from the Bloomberg New Energy Finance, this is a financial guru for the Bloomberg Group. He says we're just now entering the age of plenty. We're entering the age where solar is competitive at every level, where renewable energy now becomes the one to beat. If you want to if you have an energy project and you want to make an argument that your energy project should be the one built, you're going to have to beat solar now, because solar is competitive and it's still on a tear. So if you've got a fossil energy project, you better be able to prove that your fossil energy project is going to be, in the long term, is going to provide more benefits than a solar project. If you've got a hydro project like Site C, the arguments are already being made that Site C is not competitive because we can produce the same amount of energy with renewables in a variety of different locations for a lot less money. Those are the kind of arguments that we're going to have to be prepared to make. So just as an example of some of the momentum that we're seeing worldwide, Hawaii is a situation quite like some of our remote communities in Northwest Territories, in that Hawaii, being isolated in the middle of the ocean, is very dependent on diesel. Most of their electricity, at one point it was almost 100% of their diesel was coming from, or 100% of their electricity was coming from diesel. They just voted I think it was 74-2 in their legislative assembly there, that they want to go 100% renewable by 2045. And the utility companies there are forecasting that by 2030, they want to see a 25% drop in the cost. So it's not just a matter of renewables because they're the environmental thing to do. In Hawaii, it's renewables because they're the economic thing to do. In Burlington, Vermont, today, they're running on 100% renewable energy, and their costs dropped 40% when they moved off. I think probably coal and diesel were there. Another one, the world's largest hybrid renewable energy project is unveiled in Jamaica. Costa Rica is now running on 100% renewable energy. Nicaragua has a goal 2 years out, they want to be at 94% renewable energy. California, first state with 5% of its electricity from utility scale solar and another 2% from distributed solar, so rooftop solar. China, the world's biggest emitter of carbon, aims to install 17.8 gigawatts this year. So it wants to install more this year than all the solar that's been installed in the US ever. And they're going to do it. And another very interesting and very optimistic thing that I just heard yesterday, coal consumption in China is down 8% already this year. So coal has peaked. Beijing has already said they want to be completely off coal for the power plants around Beijing by 2017, so in a couple of years. So we're starting to see some of the early momentum, and we're seeing some of the early dividends. Another bit of momentum that we can point to is the parts of the world where solar has reached cost parity in today's prices. Australia, Brazil, Jordan, Philippines, Germany, all of these countries in the top part of the chart there, solar is much cheaper than retail electricity from other sources. And when you get to the bottom here, we're still, either the cost of conventional electricity is very low, or they're in the early days of implementing solar, so solar's a little bit higher. But even if you just look at the cost of solar from all those countries, it's in the 10 to 20 cent range, with, I think there's one outlier, UK, it's a little bit higher. So it's in the 10 to 20 cent a kilowatt hour range for solar. Conventional can be as high as 50. I don't know if you know it, but the fully loaded cost of diesel electricity in the thermal communities, NWT, 75 cents a kilowatt hour. That's unsubsidized before subsidies.
That's also before operating and capital replacement costs.
That's the fully loaded cost.
Really?
Yeah. There's some, I mean, that's the average fully loaded cost. Some are more and some are less. But anyway, point is, grid parity is not something that's just in one or two places. It's in many places now, and it's getting to be in more places every day. The other thing that's really important news in the recent, in the last month, is the price point of the lithium-ion battery storage. I don't know how many people caught the big release of the Power Pack and the Powerwall battery storage systems, but this drops the price point for electrical storage by 75%. You know, it's revolutionary, the price drop that's been announced by the Tesla battery packs. They're looking at $250 a kilowatt hour. Back in the early days of the U.S. Sunshot, they're saying $150 a kilowatt hour for battery storage is the goal. We're already at $250, and Tesla says they'll probably drop another 30% when their new factory comes on. So we're in the range now where lithium-ion battery packs are commercially available and economic. The number that I've seen is 5 cents a kilowatt hour. So if you have to store, it costs you 5 cents a kilowatt hour. Okay. Now, the thing I wanted to point out was that this all sounds really good, but we have a particularly interesting challenge in the north, in that we have, yes, we have a very good solar resource, and in fact, in the summer, our solar resource is world class. There's probably not too many other places that can match us for solar in the summer, but we have it in the summer. We don't have it in the winter. So our problem is we have to figure out a way to store energy that's abundant in the summer so that we can make it available for use when it's not abundant in the winter. And that's our challenge. And I can get into some of this. But the progression that we have to follow in order to get to this point of abundance is we have to start small, which we've done. We've taken the baby steps. We've got a target of 20% of average generation in the thermal communities. And with that level of penetration, we should be able to get up to about 25% fuel savings. If we can add small amounts of storage during the day, we can turn the diesels off during parts of the day. And as we add more and more storage, we can carve out more of that daytime energy demand. But the next step is that we need to come up with a way to seasonally store this energy. And the conventional ways to seasonally store energy are pumped hydro or compressed air. Both of those are very geographically, you have to have the right conditions. You've got to have the right, but there's also a number of technologies on the cusp or on the horizon that we should keep an eye on, and those include things like flow batteries, which allow for basically unlimited amounts of storage. Another one that I'm really quite interested in is power to liquid, using electricity to produce a liquid fuel, which has also been very interesting to Audi car manufacturers. There's another one called, I forget what the process is called, but it involves genetically modified cyanobacteria, blue-green algae, and they can make them sweat ethanol, or they can make them sweat gasoline just by genetically modifying these organisms. Anyway, UC Berkeley and USDOE are developing an artificial photosynthesis technology that takes electricity and turns it into diesel. Basically, U.S. Navy is also very interested in it. So there's lots of things that are happening. We're well on the way. We've got, the solar stuff at Fort Simpson, which is cranking out megawatt hours. I think the total so far is 325 megawatt hours since that project was installed, which is something on the order of $100,000 fuel saving since that started. We've got the Luzoque project, which has received a lot of attention. The lithium battery energy storage project in Colville Lake has got a lot of attention. The Diavik mine is a move in the right direction, and it's gotten a lot of attention. Saves $5 million a year in diesel costs. Another one, the Raglan mine in northern Quebec, they've actually got 3 different kinds of energy storage going for them there. They're storing hydrogen, they're storing, they have a flywheel, and they have lithium batteries. This is St. Paul Island in Alaska. They've set their vision for 80% renewables by 2020. And one of the things that they've done that I hadn't heard of before is they've developed what they call rapidly dispatchable loads, which means we used to call them dump loads, So if you were over-generating, you'd have to dump whatever you were over-generating, or you'd have to curtail your energy generation, take some of your generators offline. What they've done is they've developed what they call rapidly dispatchable loads, so they match the load to the generation instead of the generation to the load. And things like heat storage, they heat water for the hospital, for the hotel, stuff like that. Interesting concept. And another one that's quite interesting is this Kodiak Island, which just announced the other day that it's gone 100% solar or 100% renewable. So here we are in the wash of this massive nuclear furnace. That's our sun, and it's looking after us. It's looked after us since forever. It's one of the most predictable, reliable, and omniscient, I guess, forces, at least in our part of the galaxy. And it's there. It's going to be there forever for all of our intents and purposes, and it's providing us with more energy than we could possibly use. So we should get on with this project. And I'm looking forward to the time when we don't have to worry about being efficient anymore. Efficiency is great stuff, but what if we didn't have to be efficient anymore? We could be back to muscle cars. I mean, we could be back to the days when people squandered energy like it was worth nothing, and it will be. It will be that cheap. That's what I'm hoping, and we're well on the way to getting there. Okay.
So our next speaker is Nina Larson. Maybe we've got time for a quick question while Nina sets up. Jonathan?
You talk about renewables and solar energy. How far up does it go? I mean, you talked about airplanes and trains and large machinery that now runs on power. How does renewables translate into that level of mechanical use?
Anything that, hydro is renewable, right? Hydro is basically just a concentrated form of solar. And we run all kinds of industrial processes on hydro. It really is just a matter of concentrating solar energy, and if you can concentrate enough of it, it's like, give me a big enough lever and I'll move the world. We can concentrate enough solar, we can do whatever we want with it. There was just a very interesting debate between the coal industry and the solar industry in India, because the coal industry is telling people, if you want to develop economically, the only option you have is coal, because it's available, it's abundant, we can get it to you tomorrow, and it's big and it's unlimited, blah, blah, blah. Well, the solar people said, we could do that. We could. In fact, there's a 2 gigawatt installation that's broken ground in China. 2 gigawatts, that's like 60 square kilometers of solar panels. It's going to deliver 20 gigawatts of power. That's industrial scale. And it's just a matter of getting it from the arrays to it's just the wires from there.
Thanks, Jeff. Hey, Nina. Nina's with Energy NWT.
Hello everyone, I'm happy to be here today. I'm here on behalf of Energy North Corporation. And I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me. I also would like to give a shout out to Brian Leacock and Nina Larson, who are listening on live stream. So we have quite a few people listening in, so I want to say hello to them as well. I wanted to talk about the NWC energy market in terms of biomass. We are the leaders in Canada. We have more than 100 wood pellet installations. Per capita, we have more installations than anywhere else in Canada. These solutions are now applicable to the other 300 small communities. Energy North has been a part of this success We have trained installers across the territories in all the regions. We have about 16 installers now that are trained. We have installed 60 boilers, and we usually support the businesses who want to start their pellet distribution business in their own region. And of course, we offer higher end products. I want to thank Doug Whiteman for talking about the products earlier in his comments with the Norman Wells installation. That was Energy North installation. It was for a camp for 100 people, and it's all served by pellet boilers and wood pellets. I think by now we know the benefits of wood pellets. If not, the slide is pretty clear. Payback time is usually between 5 to 10 years. Savings are about 15 to 50% on your annual bill. Zero carbon taxes. Local economic growth, of course. We reduce our dependency on fossil fuels. It's a renewable energy, and reduction of greenhouse gases. There's different reasons for successes. First of all, the biomass industry or the wood pellet industry started because of the industry who put in the funds and who were dedicated in having wood pellet systems in the Northwest Territories. The government also has policies and programs in place who are there to assist businesses, and they are one of the biggest customers. And both the industry and the government also put in place infrastructure for pellet delivery systems. We are also very lucky because the engineering companies are well trained and they know how to create and design pellet boiler installations. They are aware of all the latest technologies. And for Energy North, we have all our products that are certified. We have a very odd system in the NWT because we can't really duplicate the European model, because the European model has 4 seasons. We basically have almost 2, very cold to warm. So by having, like that's a cascade system, that means several small boilers, we are able to always use pellets as a source of fuel without turning on oil boilers. So we have an example in Norman Wells. The school installation is now using wood pellets, and they have not turned on the oil gas boiler for the whole season. We have pellets that are available and delivered throughout the 5 regions. I'm going to talk about the Norman Wells market. This one is interesting. We have 44 boilers that are currently installed, 19 installations. One of their largest clients is the government of the Northwest Territories with the airport and combined services building. And I'm going to switch to Brian, who is here on the picture. Most of you know him. This is his pellet storage. So he decided when he saw that natural gas was no longer going to be available within 2 years to barge in 200 tons of pellets. So he invested in a truck, in silos, and was able to deliver the pellets to the government of the Northwest Territories. He now has 1,000 tons in stock in Norman Wells and serves around 80 customers. During a winter season, he sometimes delivers pellets once a week or every second week, depending on the storage the installations have in place. This is the installation at the airport. I think this is one of the first installations that was at Brian's shop. And we have here another installation. So these are the energy boxes. They're prefabricated with the pellet systems and storage in the box. We also have good news because Inuvik has been investing as well in pellet systems. The pellet supplier is Vince Brown. He converted the Inuvik Boot Lake apartments to wood pellets, and he currently has 100 ton of pellets in stock. He already have the installations. There's different government incentives that are in place, and I think Arctic Energy Alliance has all the documents about those, and you can also download them on our website or on the GNWT ENR website.
1 point, sorry, that 50 is now 25.
25? Okay.
It's reduced, yeah.
Okay, well, it was reduced. There's great news as well, because there is a new association that was created last year, composed of all the industry, and they're working actively to change regulations and legislation. And there's also two industries who are included in the CSA committee. I'm not sure if you're all familiar with this, but it's the regulations, and we're trying to change some of those so that they fit the NWT requirements. So, and the North has been recognized as being in the forefront of the biomass energy industry. There has been some obstacles, but there is some recommendations that were drafted in the discussion paper that the association created, and you can download it on the website. It's quite long, but interesting at the same time. If you need any information, you have all the contact information here. Jan and Brian are usually the ones who will be there to answer all your questions. And of course, if you want to create a project, it's really a case by case, so it would be best to give them a call and discuss those with them. Thank you.
Very good, thank you very much. Sheena, do you have a PowerPoint, or are you good to go? I do. Okay. So we've got time again to have a quick question for Nina. Suzette.
So we're in the process of putting in a wood pellet boiler in our house, but we run into this idea or current regulation that we have to have a backup system. And hearing David talk before about the power plant going out or burning, how long do you think before that's taken away? Because I mean, it's a reliable source. We can get the pellets. Why do we need backup?
I wouldn't be able to say how long it would take. I think the industry is working on that, and yeah, it's part of their recommendations.
I don't think it has to be a regulatory issue, to tell you the truth. I think it's more insurance companies. The insurance companies will not insure you and look at it as a primary source of pain. I don't believe there's any regulatory reasons why you can't do it. It's just the insurance.
Technically speaking, yes. And there is also a recommendation for the insurance. So that standard fee and as well for backup. So it's in the works.
Yeah, but I don't think there's a need for backup. Is my starting point here.
Okay.
Sheena Adams with from Inuvik Arctic Energy Alliance.
See, can everyone, is that on?
Absolutely. Yep, you're on.
I'm on? Okay, great. So I'll start by introducing myself. My name is Sheena Adams. I work for Arctic Energy Alliance. I'm the Regional Energy Plan Coordinator for the Beaufort Delta. So I look after Inuvik and the communities in the Beaufort Delta. I also want to say hi to everyone online. I'm hoping there's some Inuvik folks online. There were some earlier today. So when I was asked to speak here, I thought, well, this is a very interesting topic. I often think of my job as quite important in Inuvik right now with the energy issues that we're dealing with and the cost of living. And I realize on a daily basis that when clients come in or projects come into my office and I'm working to help facilitate a rebate on an energy saving, whether it's an appliance or a wood stove or a boiler or a solar system, that I'm helping to keep the economy in Inuvik and the area growing, and also reduce the energy consumption. So I realize on a daily basis I'm doing that. So when I saw this topic, I thought, well, that's an interesting topic. What else am I doing within the field of energy saving to help build my localized economy, help keep the economy in the area going? So I took I look at it and I thought, well, that's true. When someone comes in and I give them a rebate because they purchased a washing machine, I've helped someone sell that washing machine. Someone will continue to save money and water, and they'll have more money to put into the economy. So that's great. Maybe bigger and more exciting for me is when I see a rebate application for a wood stove, and I know that someone has made the commitment to purchase wood locally. So I get really excited about those. So I thought to myself, well, what if someone came into my office and said, Sheena, help us, let's build a plan to see how we can build our local economy around energy in our community. Where would we start? And I thought to myself, where would I start with that? Well, I'd have to look at the community. And I would say, well, we should take an energy selfie. So an energy selfie is not taking a picture of yourself in front of solar panels. But I wanted to have this picture on here. This is in Sachs Harbor at the Polar Grizz Lodge, the bed and breakfast. And I think it's fabulous. And it works well, and I was happy to stay there and know that the energy I was using was being produced solar in Sachs Harbor. So if that isn't an energy selfie, and I would encourage us all to at least take an energy selfie somewhere. What is an energy selfie? So an energy selfie is a community energy profile of what fuels are being used and how much. So I would suggest to communities to start with that. And they have been done, and I've got some examples here which we can look at later. And it's just a collection of what fuels are coming into a community, all fuels, renewable and non-renewable, and where and how are they being used. So once you have that information, you can take that information and meet with the community and the leaders and the people in the town, and even involve the youth or whoever and say, what do we do with this information? Where can we save money? Maybe where can we create new jobs? Where can we reduce our energy consumption so that we're keeping more money locally in our community? Fairly straightforward, but they do take a lot of time. They're not that easy to put together, but they're very important. So then I would look at that, and I have some examples coming up. I would say, well, let's look at energy conservation, let's look at energy efficiency, and let's look at renewable energy. Fairly straightforward. So using an old energy map from Inuvik, which is on my list to be updated ASAP. I'm looking forward to that, so that we can see exactly, because our energy supply has changed as well as our usage, so there's a need for a more current model. But using an old energy profile from 2008, we calculated the total energy costs, where they were coming from, and who was using that. So I can look at my community and I can say, in 2008, you were using $30 million of energy. The electricity use was $12 million. Residential use was 32% of that. $3,840,000. It's a fairly big number. 1,550 homes, so on average, almost $2,500. This is just for electricity, not space heating. So I can encourage people to be conserving and efficient. And if collectively we could save 10%, and 10% is doable, just through conservation and efficiency, we would have $384,000 left in our community to circle around. So that's $1 kept locally. I know there's some economists in the room. I'm not one of them. I don't know what that would generate into as it stays and grows. But I do know that it would grow. But I do also think it's important to look at that number. There are some people who will conserve energy and they will save money and they'll be able to spend it. And for some people, they will conserve energy and it will make a difference to them possibly staying in town or having to leave because it's become too expensive. And so therefore that money won't grow, but will enable to keep people there. Or possibly allow them to have the funds that they need to buy their basic needs. This is a project I'm quite proud of in Wheelahuktuk, which I'll speak to, with Joe Jr. in the bottom picture there with his thermostat. That's his energy selfie. And this is about energy efficiency in Wheelahuktuk. So their total energy cost was $3,100,000. Their non-residential building use of that was 55%, $801,000. So within their community, if they could save 10%, and again, 10% is achievable through conserving and efficiency, they would have $80,000 extra dollars in the community. So this is Joe Jr. and I. We were just up in Wheelahuktuk a few weeks ago with an electrician from Yellowknife came up, and we spent 5 days there. And we worked with the hamlet, and we exchanged the exterior lights to efficient LED lights, which was fabulous. So they'll save energy there. And we also put in 27 of these smart thermostats into their community buildings, so they will save energy there. And my role was to help coordinate the project, but to work with each building where those thermostats were to make sure they were set at the proper temperature. They would come on in the morning, go off in the evening. If it was the fire hall, it was all correct, and that everyone felt comfortable using them. And it was very successful. We went in, the project got done. I left, everybody's happy. They're saving energy, they're saving money, and they'll have more money in their community to keep investing. So, quite happy with that one. So to save 10% does not, it's not a lot that needs to be done. So if we thought, well, if we want to save 20 or 30, we would just have to do more. So that's one way I thought, well, how can I build local economy? And we are doing it with Arctic Energy Alliance and other organizations, teaching people how they can become more efficient and how they can serve so that money stays within our local economy rather than leaving. The next thing I would do is look at renewable energy. There is quite a lot of renewable energy starting to happen up in our area, which I'm quite happy to see. It's happening on a smaller basis and some on larger basis. If you can read and research, and we've heard it all today, that was one other thing I was going to apologize for, because I have been here all day, and almost everything I'm saying you guys have heard before. But I can't just keep deleting every slide, so you're going to hear some of it again.
What was the vampire energy on your last slide? I'm sorry, I couldn't even
Reduce vampire energy. So they actually say that that just on itself can save you 10%. And so vampire energy is also referred to as phantom energy. And it's the energy that is consumed by your cell phone charger is a small example when you leave it plugged in, but perhaps if you have a big TV that's left plugged in, or a microwave that's plugged in, anything electronic that's left in and not being used. And that can account for up to 10% on its own. So when I was in Sachs Harbor, I went around unplugging things. There was no one else up there. It was a quiet time of year, and I thought, well, I'll just, I was kind of stormed in. I'll just reduce all the phantom energy from the solar panels. But I do apologize, a lot of this you have heard before, but so we do know why, and we've heard it all today, why we should invest in renewable energy. It is sustainable, it's secure pricing. Polar Girls Lodge knows that the sun will send the same bill every year to those solar panels. It's unlikely they're going to get an increase. There's community ownership, there's environmental benefits, the local jobs and training, and research also shows that communities with the longest import and export of fossil fuel benefit the most from renewable energy. And when you go to Inuvik and to Tuktoyaktuk and to Aklavik and to Sachs Harbor and Polotuk and Wheelahuktuk and to Sigachik and Fort McPherson, the communities I serve, there is a long travel for all of those fuels to get up there and get back. So the other question I have for the economists in the room is how much energy dollars leave a community. If Inuvik is spending $30 million on its community energy needs, how much of that is leaving on the trucks that drive back and forth? That's the one thing I'm going to work hard this year to figure out, because I'd like to know. And if we can determine how much is leaving, can we figure out a way to capture more of that and keep it within our community so that we have it for the people that live there and that they can use it for sustainable purposes and for living? So I'm sure you didn't hear about this today, Fort McPherson Biomass Project. So I deleted about 4 slides out of this, and I think I left 3 pictures in for you. So there's myself, I guess supervising the chipping of the chips. It just happened I was in Fort McPherson that day, and they were doing some chipping, and I was just so excited to see it, and they were excited to show me. And so that was great. And then, of course, just a picture of all their firewood. They have a storage area just full of firewood. Johnny K was filling up the boiler. It was working. I was happy to see it. And there is a picture of the boiler. And that is always a project I am happy to go and learn a little bit more about. I've just started learning about this project this year, and I hope to continue to learn more about it. We've talked about the Inuvik bulk pellet delivery, but of course I couldn't delete that slide because it's Inuvik, and it just got put on, so didn't have time. But I'm very happy to see this in Inuvik. Inuvik's very happy to see it. So far it seems to be like there's a lot of interest, and I feel like it will grow. A challenge to us having biomass with pellets on a large scale in Inuvik has been that we didn't have a supplier or a storage area. And so now that we have that, we could expect that to grow. We have lots of pellet stoves because I give lots of rebates on those, and people are very happy with those in Inuvik as well. This winter I did work out cost difference between if you were to use the LNG, or if you were to use firewood, or if you were to use your pellet stove. And pellet stove and wood were a savings of about 30%. So I was happy to work that out for people. So another interesting thing to think about is that we do spend up to 20% of our income on energy, and that's our before tax income. In some areas of the country it's less, and in some areas it's more, but we can expect that 20% of our income will be spent on energy. So that includes the energy we use in our home, our vehicles, our travel, and the energy that's used to produce the food that we eat. So anytime we can save a little bit there, it's like an energy coupon. You know, you can use it at the checkout and get 5 times its value. Try and save your energy, because you're saving money. So here's 2 examples of 2 people saving money. One's me on my bike. So I live in Inuvik and I choose to ride a bike. Sometimes I do dream of those Jeep Cherokees in a car, and I think, oh, I should get one. And then I think, no, I'm going to ride my bike, I'm going to save my money, and I'm going to save the fuel, because I am fortunate that I live in a community where I can walk everywhere. So I ride my bike. That was bike to work day. This is my dear friend Margaret Victor-Cross. She lives in Fort McPherson. She bought her new washing machine from the local North Mart and is an Energy Star. So she will enjoy saving energy. But more importantly, Margaret owns her own home, and in McPherson, it's drive-in, drive-out water. So she will also save a lot of water, both ways, coming in and out, which also means that truck doesn't need to use as much gas to get it there. So although it's just one small example, it's a nice little circle relationship. So I don't know what Margaret's going to do with all the money she's going to save, but I'll show you something that I'm going to do, or that I do. So I was like, I'm saving money because I won't have this car. How can I keep how am I spending my money? What are some good examples of how I spend it locally? And they actually relate to things we talked about today. So it allows me to participate in the Inuvik Community Garden and Greenhouse. It's great. I love it. I go there, I can grow some food. Then I'm not purchasing as much food. I can save my food. I can use my volunteer hours to grow food in the homeless shelter plot or the food bank plot, and then share that within my community. The next picture is me on skis. So with some of the money that I saved by not having a car, I can come to Yellowknife and I can go to Overlander and I can buy skis and I can go skiing. So that's fairly, I consider the Northwest Territories my community. Or perhaps I might, in Sax Harbor during the blizzard, or in the evening after work, hire my dear friend Edith, who's a fabulous sewer, to teach me how to make a parkie. And those are ways that I can take some of that money that I'm saving and keep them in my local economy. So this is my last slide. We've even talked about the Traveling Tomato today, in a sense. So the Traveling Tomato is a game that I've borrowed from WWF, who put together a curriculum that I use in the schools when I visit. It's a little skit. I hand out a tomato to the students and they all get a character. And we start by studying where did this tomato start and how much energy did it take to grow? Where was it stored? How much energy did it take to store? How long did it travel? Where did it get stored again? Then did it take an airplane ride? Then when it got to the store, what energy it took? And in Sachs Harbor, this is a really fun game. We often play it and then everyone wants to change characters. But the whole point is being how much, and I think this is perfect for today because we've talked about energy and we've talked about food security. How much energy, the next tomato we eat, did it take to grow that tomato? And how can that be changed? And that's everything, thank you.
Lots of questions. Wade, and then Jonathan, and then maybe we'll go to the online folks.
I guess a question for the two solar people, or who are, I guess they're all solar people. Now with distributed generation and things like solar with storage coming online, seen recently, if distributed generation takes off in the NWT communities where we have isolated mini grids, and knowing our current financial model of how the utility is set up, how do you rectify the two? Like, basically our model is we have a zone system right now where, costs are averaged out through the zone and whatnot. Plants in each community. If each house, in theory, becomes its own partial energy producer and energy storage system. Like, I live off grid, I don't have to use a generator for 8 months of the year here. If this becomes commonplace in these smaller communities, that poses a problem for the current NTPC model. Jack, how, you being on the board, of course, what do you see for the future? That, not trying to predict the future, but what's going to have to happen if that technology truly takes off and scales up?
I think that's a really good question, because from my point of view, the grid is really essential public service. It's a good thing, and it's something that it's a major part of all of these communities. It provides security, it levels the playing field, everybody's got access to power. It's a good thing. But if it costs more for an individual to participate in that grid than he can generate his own electricity for, he's really caught between the rock and a hard spot. Is he going to look after his own personal interests, or is he going to look after the interests of the community? So my preference would be not to do these things on an individual house basis, and especially in communities that don't have a whole lot of home ownership, where much of the housing is public housing. And in most of these thermal communities, 70% of the cost of diesel generation is government anyway. So I think, the simple solution is for the government to do it. Government to do these things. Government should be installing on its own facilities first, maybe, but ultimately it should be the government that installs these solar projects in these little communities. And ultimately, it doesn't really matter if the government keeps them or if they give it to the Power Corp, because they're both really the same thing. Power Corp is a shareholder owned entity, but they only have one shareholder. So, it's in the best interest of good government for the government to do these things in areas where they provide that service.
Okay, I guess the only reason I ask is because if distributed generation does take off, and you're not able to stop a homeowner or building owner from putting on solar and storage if they wish, and it becomes less costly. So you might have government buildings doing it, and now you might have homeowners doing it within the community. What that can result in, I guess, what some people are talking about in government, and this might be 15 years down the road, but all of a sudden you're not using your diesel for a long period, or you have to keep it because there's one person or a few groups of houses that need it. You have redundant systems then, and I guess that's the big argument, is that distributed generation really mucks around with the current kind of rate zones that we have, and the issue is you might have stranded assets. And that's the big concern right now, is that, you know, if this technology is disruptive, as you say, and it takes off, then all of a sudden GNWT's biggest asset, which is the power corporation, has all these redundant diesels that they have to keep and maintain. So the cost is still way up there, even though every individual household.
But the real cost in keeping and maintaining those diesels is not just having them sitting in the plant idle. It's providing fuel. Fuel is the big variable cost. The capital, diesels are cheap, and like the guy from Yukon said, diesels are really a beautiful thing if you never have to use them. And they're, you know, those can always stick around. They'll always be valuable as security for the system, and they're really relatively cheap to just idle.
Yeah, and I guess the other thing, that's the last thing I'll say, is that right now with the storage as it is, that unfortunately their storage is not quite there yet to have seasonal storage. So what I mean by that is you might be able to keep your battery storage in your house with your Tesla battery or whatever for 1 night or 2 nights, like an off-grid home, but you can't store the power for the entire winter. And this is one of the biggest things with energy literacy that I see. I talk to half the people on the street, you know, there's a belief that there's some big battery somewhere. And there isn't, right? We use power immediately when it's produced. I think storage is coming a long way.
I think we need another breakthrough,
Yeah.
but you know, people are working on it. You know, we needed lithium batteries 5 years ago to make electric cars viable. It's there. You know, it's going to happen. Which format it's going to settle on, I don't know, but it's going to happen, and it's not going to take that long.
Thank you.
Jonathan had a question, and then we've got 2 questions up here, and then we'll go to you, Larry.
Just a quick question. I saw a term earlier, smart grid, was on one of the PowerPoints.
What's a smart grid?
Yeah.
I know.
Okay.
A smart grid. Sorry, do you guys want to answer?
No, you go ahead.
Smart grid is basically where you have demand response, and so basically you manage both the amount of power that's being produced and the amount of power that's being consumed. And with new technologies, ideally with smart meters and then maybe smart appliances, it means that the utility will be able to know in real time what the demand from any one house is. And then as a result, they can become more efficient with their diesel dispatch or with their electrical dispatch. Right now, it's like you rev everything up to meet a load, and it's in a way, it's just like the old system. It's a 100-year antiquated system. You just go full power, and then everybody uses the power. But if you can bring the load down to meet, bring the generation amount down to meet the load, then you're going to save fuel. You're going to, and it'll become a more efficient system. So smart meters involve technology, involve utility and the individual building that in effect will communicate with one another via Wi-Fi. They already make appliances that do that now. So, you know, if your cheap power is at night when nobody's using it, well then your washing machine or dishwasher or whatever comes on in the middle of the night. And so these things are programmed.
Okay, I think, well,
that's the answer.
Probably answers that. Craig, could you give us the questions from the
Just
online
one question
folks?
going back about 10 minutes ago. Basically, it was asking about are there politicians who have an interest in keeping the status quo when we were talking about basically the.
Everybody hear this? I don't think.
Sorry. Are there politicians who have an interest in keeping the status quo in terms of the power system? So, well, yeah.
I can answer.
Who wants to try that one?
Depends which politician.
Bob, could I ask you? Are there politicians who have an interest in maintaining the status quo? I think it's shorter on that. Other politicians who are in the pocket of big oil.
Yeah, I guess I hope not. I think, people go up for election generally want to see the best thing for the people that they're representing. They may be good at it or bad at it, and they may not have the best ideas about how to go forward with it. But I don't think the motivation is sort of that wide. But I think you know, energy literacy has been mentioned as an issue a few times. And I know it's one of the objectives of Ecology North, the organization that's put this together. So, you know, unfortunately, when you get elected, you don't seem to have any requirement to learn anymore. That's my big beef. So it would be really great if the public demanded that politicians, once they were elected, had to go through things like mental health first aid, and for goodness sakes, energy literacy and eco-literacy. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you want to answer that, Dennis?
I just want to go back to that Wayne Gretzky quote, because I think politicians should go where the puck's going to be rather than stick around where the puck was. And that's one of the problems we have, that there's so much inertia in the system. It's much easier to be a politician that just sits on your butt and lets the world go by you than one that wants to interact and make change. And so when that's clearly the problem. It's easy. You know, what's the line of least resistance is to, but it doesn't get you anywhere. That line of least resistance will leave you behind in the end. And so we do need politicians that want to go to where the puck is going to be. And ask your politicians when you're getting elected if they're going to do that.
Who asked that question?
Thank you. Was there another question that was online?
Yeah, it's kind of like a long one, but I'm going to try. All right. So the next question is, I wonder if installation of solar and an increase in quality of life in these areas will lead to more consumption overall. Energy may be renewable, but a lot of our materials aren't. If we're truly concerned with environmental sustainability, shouldn't we try to develop more efficient or concentrated societies?
Anyone? Mitch, do you want to try that one?
Sure. Absolutely no question on both.
Maybe you could use the mic there.
Sure. But like was said earlier, I think what's important is the ultimate goal has to be to get to, I think, a place where energy doesn't matter. It's there, we can use it, it's cheap. And we're all going to be allowed to do the things that we want to do every day and not have to worry about necessarily conserving. I mean, we always want to conserve, but sure would be nice if there was enough electrical energy for us to do whatever we wanted, whenever we wanted to.
Yeah, there seems to be, have developed this idea that somehow energy is dirty. And it's probably because, you know, most of our energy has been coming from dirty sources for so long. But energy itself is not dirty. There's nothing wrong with using energy. Energy is beautiful stuff. It's what gets stuff done. And if our energy is coming from a source that's not dirty, then what's wrong with using energy? You know, it's beautiful. We should use energy. We should look forward to the day when we can use as much energy as we want and still produce no other environmental or negative environmental impact. And that's possible. We can get there. I think the point that this question is getting to then is that if energy is no longer the limiting resource, something else will be. And there will always be a need to be efficient in our use of, maybe it'll be water, maybe it'll be lithium, or maybe it'll be gold, or maybe it'll be some other resource. At some point there'll always be something that limits our ability to push further. So efficiency is definitely a virtue, but energy efficiency, if energy is cheap and clean, it's not that important, is it?
Oh boy. Thank you. Dave, I know you've been trying to get in here, and then Jonathan and Larry.
Thanks. My question was for Mitch. Mitch, you mentioned, I think it was a 20% uptick in costs this year. I was wondering, is that for purchases of equipment, or was that generation costs? What was
No,
that?
it's purchases of equipment. Two things happened there specifically. Just the strength of the Canadian dollar. So our suppliers, and I'm sure the same for my counterpart here, just the cost of purchasing the equipment alone has increased due to the difference in the dollar based on this year and last year. I think the suppliers took up the grunt. There was some increase last year overall, but the suppliers took up the grunt of that and didn't increase costs this year. They were forced to. And then the introduction of a fairly substantial tariff on Chinese solar panels went into effect this year, which has kind of got the industry into a bit of an uproar. But we're getting past it. We're getting past it.
Jonathan?
No, I asked my question.
You're good? Larry?
Yeah, I'm just going to make a comment about a discussion that went on a little before about what you're going to do with the old power plants and if it takes over, everybody has their own solar energy thing. Will that be similar to saying, well, we got to keep the horse and buggy because of the lobbying? Right, so we got to give up the old way of doing things like old dinosaurs.
I agree 100%. It's going to involve change.
Yeah.
Huge.
But until you
Power corporations are going to have to change.
Until you have a base load power that is renewable,
Yep.
and you have the storage that can happen over a season, then you won't replace diesels until that happens, or yeah, I just can't see it.
Of course not.
The
Of course
PUD
not.
requires 110% of generation in the community, so you have to keep that regulated amount of power, and right now, there's just, it's not there yet.
Yeah,
But it's coming.
It's coming. It's good. It's baby steps. I mean, it's going to start in this little community and move on. I mean, why can't they shut that big generator off and put a little one in to deal with?
Exactly, a lower load generator. I still have this discussion amongst the bureaucrats when we talk about energy, and it's basically, that's what we're going to need. That's what's going to have to happen before we can get the small communities completely off diesel, and we just don't know when that's going to be.
Right.
And as they always remind me, Wade, diesel still is the cheapest way to power the communities, and I of course have arguments back and forth, and I say, well, it depends what kind of accounting you're using compared to my accounting. So, but that's the kind of discussion that we still have. But anyways, I talk about it.
Thank you. Any final questions? I know there's folks at the back there that might have a question. Anyone? Mr. Krutko.
Yeah, one of the challenges we all face in the north is...
Maybe I'm going to ask you, because I don't think anybody can hear you, if I ask you to come to the mic.
Yeah, I think one of the big challenges we have in the Northwest Territories is dealing with regulations and policies and procedures and red tape, and I think that one of the things we had, I know with Dean on the biomass stuff, that, just trying to get the whole biomass industry accepted in the Northwest Territories, we are dealing with outdated policies in regards to, dealing with boiler systems that were designed for the oil industry in regards to vessel boilers legislation in Northwest Territories, where you almost have to have a person on 24/7 just to watch your boiler system. So I think in the government of Northwest Territories, when we were doing our energy plan and whatnot, that was something that we had to confront and figure out, well, how do we design these things? And if you can notice, most boiler systems in the Northwest Territories are under 500 kilowatt, just because the whole idea is that anything over that, you practically have to have somebody on staff for 24/7. So I mean, it's the whole deregulating the industry to meet really the environment you're working in, and not accepting what somebody else's standards in Southern Canada or whatnot, and an industry, a boom bust industry, such as the oil and gas industry, where a lot of these policies and regulations were developed. So I think that's the thing that for all the different people up here in different industries you represent, is that that is the challenge. Trying develop your business case and develop your industry in the Northwest Territories, is that the regulatory system is cumbersome at best, and I know the Power Corp, being the minister, going through these rate reviews and everything else, it's a challenge just to try to read between the lines. I mean, you can fill a room with regulations, but at the end of the day, why do we need so much regulations? I think my question is more around what do we do to deregulate these industries and make them basically able to sustain and maintain the industries in Northwest Territories in regards to these renewable energies. Thank you.
I can't speak to solar panel and energy production, but for the biomass part, I encourage everyone to visit the Biomass Association website, and all industries and businesses have gone together to address these issues and policies and regulations. And like I said, there's 2 members of the industry who are on the CSA Canada board to make changes to the regulations, so they're up to date with the needs of the microsolars. So, and I agree with you, David.
Thank you, Nina. And I think that there's an opportunity here in this forum, as Craig Scott mentioned this morning. There are sheets at the back table to put forth motions for the changes that we need to see to support localized economies. And we're hearing this common theme about regulatory and policy barriers in food systems and in energy systems. That's been a common theme today. And so I would encourage you to take one of those sheets home with you tonight and see if you could craft up a motion that we could go forward with, and bring it out to the people online and also the people in this forum. That would be extremely helpful. Doug Whiteman.
A couple of comments. There was a question asked about do you need a backup system for your wood pellet system, and if the power goes down, all your heating systems are going to quit if they're using electricity. So it's kind of redundant, that question. But what I did, nobody told me when I put a 4-share pellet furnace in my house and a boiler in another building that I needed a backup system, but I did put wood pellet stove in as a backup system that my wife can start a little 2,000-watt Honda generator, very easy to start, and run that just by simply plugging it in. So there's a backup system that we have that the other buildings in town on propane or diesel now don't have. So that's one way. Another concept, and it'll probably get laughed at, but it wasn't laughed at 100 years ago or 80 years ago, and it may not even here in the territories 50 or 80 years from now. And that's biodiesel raising crops. I took a look when the fuel hit $2 a liter. What can I make if I turned all these potatoes into alcohol and in turn made biodiesel at that? And the dollar value wasn't too far apart there, where I may be better off now that the potatoes are down to $1.50 a pound to make alcohol out of them and mix it up to make the biodiesel and have that product for sale for you. And then again, there's all the red tape we're talking about. A guy in BC that was going to try that is a potato grower told me, don't even apply. You'll have the RCMP and binoculars watching every day. So I myself quite fortunate that my grandfather had a book, and he had actually applied for permits to make his own alcohol, regular alcohol. And it's quite a substantial book showing all different types of stills and mash makers and things like this that will tell me how to do that if I want to do it. But again, it's that red tape that will keep you away from maybe going after that. So until things change, we probably won't see that in territories.
So I think we're coming to the end of our day here. I know that I'm looking around at some very tired faces. We've had kind of a lot of information put to us today. So I'd like to thank this panel for the wealth of information that they've shared, and I'd ask you to give them a hand. So a couple of things before we quit. The City of Yellowknife has been a co-sponsor of this gathering, and they have passed on a note to everyone that's participating to take time to support local businesses. And if you're someone that uses Twitter, you can tag your shopping experience with #ShopYK on Twitter and Instagram, and you'll have a chance to win a $100 gift certificate. So that's hashtag ShopYK. And you'll find that on Twitter or on Instagram. And the winning submission will be announced at the barbecue on Saturday night. And we're having fish, I believe, at the barbecue. And that's going to be at Sumbuckay Park, down by the Detta Ice Road. So if you're on Twitter...
Wait. Sumbuckay Park is one by City Hall.
Oh, the one,
Yeah.
we're going up by the City Hall. I thought we were, sorry, by City Hall. And then the final thing, Doug Whiteman got a note from Cease Macaulay, and so he'd like to read a few of the lines that are pertinent to this gathering, because Cease is quite a critic. Doug, could I ask you to come to the mic so everybody could hear that?
I need a little bit of light. Cease is a well-respected 92-year-old woman in Norman Wells, and it kind of made me think after I read this is, why is it that all us young guys are here talking about this and not having true elders here talking about this, because they go right back to the start when a lot of it was happening here in the territories. So it would probably take me 5 minutes to read this letter. I don't know if I could pick out parts, but she did send it to me at coffee time, and I said that it was urgent, so I figured she wanted it read. She must be following this in the Wells. And she says the GNWT did it again, this time in agriculture. This time in agriculture, I hear that 3 people from Norman Wells showed up with 12 people from Delaney and Toledo who flew into Norman Wells for a meeting. They were then flew to Good Hope with people who were no doubt flown into Good Hope from Cova Lake. I understand they flew a company called Sericon from Edmonton to Yellowknife and spoke to this she spoke to this company, and they are sincere, really believe in what they are doing, and they are educating a bunch of greenhorns on farming, she says. The one who should have a good kick in that, is the NWT. I'm not going to say where the kick is. Anyhow, they should have talked to elders about it, and that's what made me think it's just us young people here talking.
They are talking to elders. I don't think we should read Cease.
Well, but she does bring up some of these points. I know that she can upset people, but anyhow, she says they want to know people used to have gardens, which were mostly potatoes, and they learned gardening from the missionaries and the traders and the Hudson Bay Company, and people used to have root cellars in their houses. My family had fresh vegetables until April. With all the money they are spending on studies and flying and accommodating people all over the territories, they can talk to elders in committees. I spoke to people, and many said they have pictures of parents with pictures of them in their gardens. I believe the NWT should use local elders as advisors to their young generations, or hire one person with a helper, which I kind of hear being promoted here in communities, to hire one person as a helper to encourage and help local people who want to do farming or maybe grow. I'll get through this here. Maybe grow chickens, turkeys, and pigs. In fact, we have Doug Whiteman who said, I'm not reading this just because I was mentioned there, who sold potatoes, because she gives me heck too, because she should be doing it, not me. But anyhow, who sold potatoes and also raised chickens, turkeys, pigs, so on. The missionaries had chickens and fresh eggs all year round in Fort Providence. GNWT can set up someone in small business, maybe only for the summer, with in each and every community, buy a small tractor, plow to plow the earth, shovels, forks, and somebody that can sell seeds or hand out seeds to the people who know how to grow anything, with the money wasted flying around to teach people about farming, spend money on the local people, which David's talking about, spend money on the local people. You send somebody in there and train them. So here's what I got to kind of listen to what she's saying. Well, I do listen to what she's saying. Spend money on the local people. Buy everything, the hardware, and you don't need greenhouses in the NWT, but she goes back on this bit later. We have 24 hours a day. Obviously, she's really involved in this, thinking about it. We have a lot of sunshine. You could teach people how to create root cellars. My family used to have fresh vegetables until April in the root cellars. And for the future, build prisons out on the land and do it like Americans. Some of their penitentiaries are self-sufficient. They grow vegetables, fruit, and agriculture and all sorts. They also sell their produce. Plus, it will train prisoners in a trade in farming. As I wrote about growing vegetable long ago, before we had a government, people used to communicate up and down the Mackenzie River from Fort Smith to Aklavik, and there was always a competition on who had the best garden in the NWT. Well, the little town, Arctic Red, which is Sigachik now, Mr. Clark, who is
Dale Clark's dad, he used to win all the time. And the Klavic had a cow or a couple of goats, and Peffer had 2 horses. I guess Peffer was probably an Inuvik, maybe. So you may say GNWT was sleeping for 54 years. They finally wake up to gardening. I asked my best friend, Rosie Norwegian, who's now passed away, in Toledo, once when I was still in Inuvik, how come no one puts in a garden anymore? And she replied, don't get upset at me, I'm just a messenger. Too much welfare. People don't have to work. Anyhow, now that the GNWT woke up to planting gardens, they must stop wasting money on flying meetings and planning, etc., and just work with each and every community by creating a one-man job to run and manage the tools, tractors and equipment, rigs, and so on for the local people who are going to do the farming in each community. In each and every community. When I talk about gardens, I always think of Peter Green. He was going to try gardening in Paulatuck. I just talked to him to find out how he was doing. He said, on the Arctic coast it's a bit too cold, but he's going to try this year in a greenhouse. He said he already started his plants in his house, and it was so nice to talk to Peter. I really miss the people from the Delta and Beaufort region. One great way to get people going on gardening is start a competition. Maybe 3 prizes, first, second, third, in the thousands of dollars cash. Well, that usually gets people motivated. I love the land. Libby Whitall, call her. She is always so enthusiastic about her living off the land.
I think that probably gives us a flavor. That's good. Thanks very much. That's good. That's good. I think we got the flavor of, it's great that we have a 92-year-old member of the NWT following us online and being interested in this issue. And that we can really applaud. So I want to thank everybody for their participation today, and I think there's been an awful lot of learning going on in this room, and we've got the potential to change our future. And thank you all so much, and have a good night's rest. Think about some motions, and be ready to start right on time at 8:30 tomorrow morning. Have a good evening. Thank you.
Hi, Sam. Hey, John. Shook your hand in a while. How you doing?